Hello, my name is Jeff Rolka. I want to thank you for checking out my video. I'm paraphrasing here, but there is an old proverb that says, if you give one a fish, they will eat for the day, and teach them to fish, and they will eat for a lifetime, or something to that effect. I am paraphrasing. And it is with that thought, along with the fact that in the comments I've often been asked about the scales that get used for singing vocalizations, that I submit this video to you as a way to formulate your own scales for your vocalizations. Why would we do this when there's, I don't know, I've got like 100 some odd videos per FOC of warm-ups on the channel alone. Why spend the time learning to do this? Well, guess what? I'm going to give you at least a few different reasons. First and foremost is that you can tailor the exercises to suit your specific needs. So if you've got a vowel that's really troubling you, or you've got a combination of vowels that's really tricky for you, you can really dial that in and get to work on that. Additionally, sequences of vowels from your songs, especially songs that you might be currently writing that no one else in the entire world might know about, which is really cool when you think about it. When you're writing that song, it's only you. Those sequences that you may have written into the tricky parts of your melody, being able to do your own vocalization will really help you to get the most out of your voice at those times. In the bigger picture, being able to construct and create your own vocalizations, especially those that are principally used for singing technique, I think enables you to have a more intimate relationship with both the written and the oral aspects of the Western tonal system of music. That's the system of music that this whole thing, this piano, and that most of us work within, adheres to. So you have a greater sense of melody, how melodies are created, and the intricacies, the similarities, and the differences that you can then use in your own songs, or learn to avoid because you don't like them. And finally, with this increased understanding, both written and oral, which is to say ear training, it facilitates your ability to more accurately predict the next pitch in your melody. That means you will sing better in tune. That's something that gets talked about an awful lot in the comments, and quite frankly is kind of important. We want to be able to sing in tune or to choose not to. But if we can't consciously choose to sing in tune, then the choice is being taken away from us. So with understanding the written or played scale passages, being able to tailor your exercises, and having a greater oral or ear training sense of those forthcoming pitches will increase your accuracy both in intonation, and that also translates into harmony singing as well. In order to make the scales, we have to understand a little bit about Western tonal music. Again, that's the system, the overarching set of rules and the way that the system is constructed that most of us adhere to. There are different traditions for different cultures in different areas of the world. For example, Indian classical music is generally structured around ragas. On the other hand, songs from Bollywood, oftentimes the music bed will be of a Western tonal music tradition, but if you listen carefully to their melodies, and it's such a beautiful juxtaposition of styles, the melodies will evoke aspects of their classical traditions, and it's gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful juxtapositions I think we get to regularly hear in music. It's fun to work with vocalists on it. It's fun to listen to, in my opinion. Additionally, one might even argue that there are different subsets of rules within Western tonal music. For example, in classical music, and jazz for that matter, the 2-5-1 is the most commonly used cadential formula to establish key. So you'll hear those occurring over and over and over again throughout the music. But in popular song forms, oftentimes we get a 1-4-1, or you'll get a 5-4-1. This takes its roots from blues and spiritual music going way back. In getting started with the Western tonal system of music, we have to at first take a look at the octave. The octave gives us the 7 letter names that we use in Western tonal music, and it establishes a pattern that goes all the way up and all the way down the system. If we look at it here, I am playing an A here and an A here. And the letter names A, B, C, D, E, F, G go all the way through G, and then A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, all the way up, and then of course down, but in reverse order. A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, and so on and so forth. There are 7 letter names in Western tonal music. The black keys that are just up above these keys are named according to their nearest neighbor. So for example, if we look at A here, then a semitone up, or this black key right here, we get A sharp. We also get this key here, which would be A flat. The notes can also be named along with their other neighbors. So, for example, here's G. Here we have G sharp, which a moment ago was A flat. And again, down here, G flat, which could also be F sharp. When a note is spelled differently, F sharp, G flat, but it's the same pitch, it is said to be enharmonic. This is important because this forms a key component of how we spell scales. Every scale must have all 7 letters, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We cannot omit any, and we cannot have any of them twice. This is why those enharmonic pitches don't just have an absolute value. They change depending on what key we happen to be spelling. It is important for us in forming the scales to understand that the distance between any 2 adjacent keys on the piano make a semitone or a half step. So from G to G sharp is a semitone. From G to G flat or F sharp, that is a semitone as well. If we skip over that pitch, if I skip over the G sharp and go to A, that makes a whole step. Or a tone can also be referred to as a major second. A semitone is a minor second. There are, of course, a wide variety of intervals, but in the purposes, or I should say for the purposes of forming our scales for singing, that will be enough for this particular video. Most scales for singing are a small portion of the major scale. However, we're going to start by forming up the entire major scale. It is comprised of a formula of whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, or tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Let's begin with the key of C major. There's C. In my major scale formation, the first interval I have is a whole step. So there's D, that's a whole step, and then I do another whole step, which brings me to E. You'll notice that E and F are directly adjacent. There is no key between them, and so therefore they are a half step. That is a semitone. and that satisfies our major scale formula. We then have another whole step, another whole step, yet another whole step, and finally a half step that brings us to the octave above C. We can, of course, call them by their letter names: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and I would encourage you to do so. However, I would also encourage you to use numbers: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. I would also encourage you to use solfege: do, re, mi, fa, so, la, ti, do. Using the numbers and the solfege syllables is an excellent practice for your ear training or oral skills. This will make your hearing of melodies more acute and eventually, with time and practice, allow you to hear and know the scale degrees of the melody that you are hearing and be able to transcribe it in real time. In truth, that's kind of just the beginning. It goes far beyond that. But for our purposes here, imagine how helpful that would be to be able to listen to the melody of a song that someone's singing and immediately know the scale degrees that they are singing. If you're a harmony vocalist or you want to sing harmonies, this immediately facilitates picking your next pitch. The benefits just go on and on and on. Suffice to say, solfege or numbers, if you can, work a bit of that into your practice. That's the entire major scale. Let's do one more that incorporates a few black keys so you can see how the whole half thing plays out. Let's do D. So here's D. And first off, we need a whole step. We need another whole step, which means we skip over the F and go to F sharp. Then we have a half step. Then we have another whole step, another whole step. Another whole step means we skip over the C and go to C sharp, and a half step arriving us at D. Notice that when I spelled this scale, I said D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. I certainly could have said D, E, G flat, G, except that now we've got two G's and there's no F in the scale. That doesn't work with the system, and so we call it F sharp. The scales for singing, though, generally speaking, only uses the first 5 pitches. So if you're using D, then all you really need is the first 5 notes. So whole step, half step, whole step, and now I have my scale. Of course, I'm playing this by having my thumb come under there, which is how I was taught to play my scales. For the purposes of just your singing practice, you can just use 5 fingers. It would be beneficial to eventually learn to do the scales with some set of fingering patterns so that you can play them seamlessly. But in getting started and in getting the vast majority of vocal patterns that, under your belt so you can play them, just playing them with each of the fingers will be sufficient for now. Just knowing those 5 notes gives you access to that scale. Another popular comparative scale that I use all the time is 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Same 5 pitches. Another scale that frequently comes up in my videos, and I'm sure elsewhere too, is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All all using those same 5 pitches. However, we did start off by learning the entire major scale. This enables you to cover the wider range that your vocal melody may use. So let's say that your song is in G. Here's G. And let's start by making the entire major scale. G to A, whole step. A to B, whole step. B to C, half step. C to D, whole step. D to E, whole step. E to F sharp, whole step. F sharp to G, half step. And now we have an octave. These are the 7 notes in the G major scale. And that in and of itself would allow you to practice and vocalize in G, the key of your hypothetical song, and also really get your ear training grooving with G major. And because you know the whole scale and you know all those notes, you can tailor your exercises to suit the contours of your melody. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that your melody only goes to the D that's above middle C. And it goes down to this B natural here. Because you now know all the notes of your scale, you can easily grab those first 5 notes up to D. And since you made the scale and you know that the next few notes are E and F sharp, the 6th and 7th respectively, from this G you can go down, and here we find ourselves on D, C, and B, the lowest pitch that you have in your vocal melody. So now you have the ability to vocalize the entire tessitura that your song requires of you. This is the gold standard in warm-ups. A specific warm-up, specific for your song. This is why, this was years ago, someone asked me how I can keep on doing warm-up after warm-up after warm-up, because there are just oodles and oodles of different songs and different ways of putting together these combinations and different requirements. In theory, for every song that's out there, it could have its own specific warm-up. Now, we don't really need to do that. You know, the technique translates over across the wide swath of our repertoire as the way that we sing becomes more habitual, as we make a habit of singing a certain way. But here, you now have this great pattern. And whatever combination of vowels you may need to practice for your song. Or whatever it might be. It enables you to make the vocalization so that it is specific to your song. And that's going to be the best practice for you and that song in giving your best performance for it and being the best in tune that you could possibly be. One little quick note by way of wrapping this all up is that you can, of course, do all this on a guitar as well. And in some ways, it's even easier. If we're using a guitar for our vocalizations, we just need to know that the space between one fret to the next is a semitone, the same way that the space between 2 adjacent piano keys was a semitone. And if we go up to 2 frets, we have a tone or a whole step. And if we use the same formula that we had for our 5-note scale from before, whole, whole, half, whole, we can easily shape our scales. Now, there is one other interval that we have to remember, which is that on the lower strings, the E, A, D, and G, the intervals between each of those strings is a perfect 4th. That's important because while we could go E, up a whole step, F sharp, up another whole step, now a half step, and now a whole step, and then back down. That's only going to result in us really having just a few different, really easily accessible scales to play. And it's easier and faster to learn a pattern. It's just that we have to switch strings after the second scale degree. So if, for example, we're on G, and we go up a whole step, another whole step is the next scale degree, which will bring us here. However, when we allow for the perfect fourth difference between the two strings, that means we can also get that pitch right here. So those two pitches are the same note. And so we can go from G up a whole step, up another whole step, up a half step, and finally another whole step. And we get this really nice pattern that we can play. And it's very easy to move up and down chromatically because the pattern remains the same. And it will also work on the next two strings. And so on and so forth, up and down the neck of the guitar to get different keys that we can then use to work on our songs or just do our vocalizations. And there you go. Those are how we can make scales to tailor and create our very own vocalizations. As always, I hope this helps. The intent here is to enable you to get the most out of your voice. And a little bit of effort here and a bit of practice too. And you will be able to really dial in your practice for a given segment of a particular song or problem spot or something to that effect. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them in the comments section or find me on Twitter. My name is Jeff. Take really good care of your voices. Enjoy singing, and hopefully we'll see you again. Bye.